everybody, and welcome to Sammy Scrolls, where I tell you all about some of the best books out there. This episode I've got quite a special book to show you guys. So we've taken a break from The Walking Dead, and for this episode I've actually tried out a genre of book that I'm usually not a big fan of. This one's more of a fantasy book, and I usually don't get into that kind of thing, but this one is definitely one of a kind. In this episode we're looking at Have You Met My Succubus? Excuse me if I said that wrong, I'm trying, but that shows you how little I know about this genre. But I really enjoyed this book. I mean, I'd never heard of a succubus before. I didn't know much about gnomes and brownies and fairies and all that sort of stuff. I've never come across it. I've tried fantasy books before and I just couldn't get into it. Usually the only way I enjoy this style is if it relates directly to our world, kind of like the Harry Potter books. That's fantasy, but it's set in our world so I can relate to it more. This is set in a totally different world. We actually only look at one continent of that planet. I'm assuming it's on a different planet. But it's still similar enough, I guess, that I can relate, but it's also different enough that I feel like I've tried something totally new. So yeah, that's the reason I don't really like fantasy very much. I like to relate to books and characters, and when they're so far off and outlandish, I just can't. But the writer of this book, Alan Williams, is actually, ready for it, my sister's fiance's dad. He wrote this book, and I'm not saying it's wonderful just because I know the author, which is pretty cool, but really, like, the main character, Fury, is awesome. I absolutely adore her, and she is what kept me going, because there was a few times where it was getting more to where it would appeal to passionate fantasy readers, and I was kind of sitting there going, oh, I don't know about this, but Fury always kept me going because I wanted to know what was going to happen next and how she was going to cope with the next thing. And she's just such a relatable character. She's not what I've seen in a lot of fantasy books is you have this, like, I don't really know how to say it, but they're like just too far different because they've got these powers and there's like very little humanity to them. They're all about this magic or whatever it is that they can do, and so there's not really too much of a human quality. There's not a lot of emotional writing in a lot of fantasy books I've tried. It's all just about showing off the magic and the like wonders of the land, and that's great, but I get into reading because I want to bond with the characters. So Fury really does that from the get-go. I mean, that first chapter, my goodness, I was beside myself. I'd only just met Fury, I knew nothing about her, I didn't know that she was a mage, kinda didn't really know what a mage was. I knew they could do magic, but I didn't know, like, what's the difference between a mage and a witch and that sort of stuff. Like, still not really sure, but from what I get, mages are a big deal. And I didn't know that that's what Fury was. I didn't really understand what that was. I just started reading the book, and she starts out like, you don't even get to warm up into the book. Alan just takes you on a journey from the first page. So you meet the main character and then bang, it's straight into action. And that first chapter really starts to show who Fury is, because she gets into some strife, and because we don't know much of her backstory or her personality or anything, but you just know that she's likable. I can't explain it, you have to read it. But there's something about her that you just instantly like her. And when you see her in strife, it's really difficult, and I didn't know if or how she was going to get out of the situation, or was harm going to befall her, how bad would it be, no idea. And I was literally like gripping onto every page, trying to read as fast as I could to find out, was Fury going to be okay, what was going to happen. And yeah, just from the first page you're sucked in, and it just goes from better to better. So that first story, this is actually a collection of short stories. It's not like one book, well, it is one book, but you know what I mean, it's like not one story from the chapter to the next. It's short stories, which is kind of cool because then you get like glimpses of their life rather than just seeing this one story and that's all you get. It might jump forward a few months or whatever it is. So it's kind of cool to see that progression, and it happens a bit faster. So I enjoyed that. But the first one sets you up as to who Fury is in her heart. It shows you her compassion and her empathy for others. And in the first chapter, I think that's why I got so attached, because I could relate to that. She saw a bad thing happening and a creature suffering, and she wasn't just going to stand idly by and let that happen. So that was really cool. As the book progresses, you do get a bit more into the fantasy world, which was interesting because it actually comes with a little map in the front. I don't know if all of them come with a colour version, but I got a colour version, yay! And so I think that helped me to connect as well, because every time Fury, or whichever character I was following at the time, mentioned a place, I was going to this map and saying, oh, they're in Helioborn, oh, they're at the Islands of the Sun, or whatever it is. Like, I was able to follow them, so they were up north, and they went down, and they went back up again, and they were over at this spot, and it helped. As someone that doesn't really get fantasy that much and needs that connection, that was cool, because it made the world, even though it's not real, it made it feel more real, so I could relate to it. So good job, Alan, that was a good idea. You get into that fantasy world more. We meet more creatures and come across threats that the average reader that isn't into fantasy wouldn't know about. I mean, there was a chapter that kind of got me a bit, and I was a bit scared. I'd not come across a creature like that before, and I confess to being freaked out by one of the stories in this. But it's still really good. I didn't stop reading. It's just I'm not used to the creatures that are in this, so meeting them for the first time in the way that they come across in this book is a little bit daunting, but still really enjoyable. And so you meet and sort of fall in love with Fury, and then she gets this little buddy, this little brownie friend called Elusive, and she is a hoot. She's just they're the perfect team, because Fury's very sure of herself most of the time, and she's kind of a like to hell with it kind of person from what I could see, because she has a goal, she's going to get there, and it doesn't really matter how she gets there. She's going to have a plan, of course, but she's like, this is what we're doing and that's what's happening, and anything else doesn't matter, and the risks don't matter, sort of thing. It's like, we're achieving this and that's what's happening. And then Elusive comes in and she's like, Fury, are you sure about this? And there's like that back and forth between them, which is quite cool, because it makes Fury step back and have a look at herself. And Elusive is as relatable, if not more relatable than Fury, because she gets like ticked off by some of Fury's mannerisms that I'm sure we can all relate to. Like, Fury isn't a very tidy little gnome. Well, when it comes to magic she is, but in other regards, no. And it annoys Elusive no end. And we've all met that person that just has that one trait that really, really annoys us. Like, for me, I can't stand it when you're watching a movie or you go to the theatre or something and someone talks the entire way through. That's my just deal breaker. Don't like it. And Elusive's is, she can't stand it when people are messy. And so seeing her reaction to Fury and Fury's reaction to Elusive being annoyed, it's so cute. And yeah, it's just, I can't tell you enough how good this is. Like, I don't like fantasy at all, and I could not put this book down. I just completely loved it. And every story, like, they're all short stories, so they're all different, but they have enough in common that it's easy to connect from one to the other. You don't feel like you've finished one story and now you're trying to figure out what the heck the next one is about. There's still a flow, so while it's not a book like a traditional start of the story, middle of the story, end of the story like novel, the short stories still have that in themselves, and somehow they still manage to flow all the way through. There's 10 stories in this, and they all flow as if it was just one long book. Like, it is awesome. I really, like, I don't get this excited about a book unless I really mean it, and I can't believe that I actually read a fantasy book that I liked. And I was telling people about it the whole time I was reading it, and I'd be calling people and be like, So this just happened and that's freaky. Or I was out to dinner with a friend and I was telling her about how I got freaked out by one of the stories, which I want to tell you, but I'm not going to. You need to go buy this book. So if you love fantasy, or if you have not had a positive experience with the genre before and you want to have one, buy this book. I will put the link in the description to the Facebook page, to the website, and how to buy a book from Alan, whatever it is. I'll figure it out by the time this is up. So check the description and get one of these books. I promise you, you will not be disappointed. I absolutely loved it. I think I've rambled on enough, but I love it. Like, usually it's The Walking Dead or something and I'll be like, yes, but this book did it too, because it's so awesome to have finally gotten into a genre that I totally avoided before, and to have something that made that genre accessible to me and enjoyable. It's such a treat, because this isn't just a new book, this is a totally new journey that I got to go on, and oh, it was so good. Little Fury on the cover, so cute. So yes, thank you so much to Alan for letting me review the book on Sammy Scrolls. Please, please, please go buy it. If you've got a book that you've written and you'd like to see it on Sammy Scrolls, let me know. Or if you've got a favourite book that you'd like to see, shoot me a message, I'd love to read it. But thank you so much for watching. Take care until I see you next time. Bye!